What you are about to experience is out of this world. Politics, history, and of course, a lot of entertainment. It's time to rock it with the Docket.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Kyle Dockery with the Dockery Docket. We are here with our very 110th episode of the Dockery Docket. I'm excited to be here, and I hope that you are excited to be here as well. And if you are excited to be here as well, make sure to go down below, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, so then you never miss one of my videos. So, is a world war inevitable? I know that is a very weird way to start out this episode, but if we look back through history, there wasn't really a starting line for a world war. There wasn't a defining moment that said, okay, now we are in a world war. Maybe during World War I, people thought that the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand was just that, an assassination, and nothing would come after that. Or when people read the news about the Nazis invading Poland, people didn't think that it was a second world war. Maybe they thought that this evil mustache man would be stopped very, very soon and nothing terrible would happen. Of course, today we understand that those were the situations that started a global conflict. The point is, wars, especially world wars, are unpredictable, and they can come out of nowhere. What if we are on the brink of a world war right now, and we don't even know it yet? Well, the more I read about these different situations that are happening against Russia and Ukraine, the more I get nervous that this could lead us into a global conflict. And this conflict could go nuclear. As we have talked about before on previous episodes, Vladimir Putin has claimed that he is willing to use nuclear weapons, and has even claimed that he is not bluffing when he says that. Tensions are continuing to get tight with Russia and Ukraine, as on September 26th, there were bubbles rising up in the Baltic Sea. This was due to the Nord Stream 1 pipeline exploding, and no one knows really what happened or who did it. There are many blue checkmarks on Twitter, along with other journalists, that are claiming that Russia did it themselves. However, there is a problem with that theory. The pipeline is a Russian pipe, which connects Russia to Germany. So then Russia can transport oil over to Europe. So why on earth would Russia want to sabotage themselves and destroy their own pipeline? Maybe Russia is saying, well, if Europe cuts off our oil, then if Europe just so happens to change their mind, they can't get Russian oil at all because the pipeline is broken. Russia claims that these allegations are stupid and points the finger at the United States and the West for the pipeline breaking, as Moscow suggested that the United States stood to gain from the pipeline bursting. Is there any evidence that the United States was involved in blowing up this pipeline? Well, there's a little evidence, but it's a little sketchy, as there's a video from February 7, 2022, where Joe Biden is talking about how if Russia invades Ukraine, there would no longer be a Nord Stream pipeline. Here's that clip.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
We will bring an end to it. What does that mean? Does that mean that America blew up the pipeline? Or is it all just a bunch of Russian propaganda and they are taking the president out of context? Maybe Joe Biden is saying, we're going to stop them from using the pipeline. We're going to put sanctions on them so they can't use the pipeline anymore, not literally blow it up. As of right now, we can't really confirm who blew up the pipeline, as there are still investigations going on. However, I do believe the story that Russia blew it up themselves over this idea that America and our allies somehow blew it up. Who knows? Maybe the pipeline just burst on its own due to oil pressure. There are so many different possibilities. However, that wasn't the only attack that took place, as on October 8th, there was a truck bomber that blew up on the Kerch Strait Bridge, which is a bridge that connects Russia to Crimea. This explosion left 3 dead, and the bridge to partially collapse. At first, Ukraine didn't come out and claim that they did this act, but they have wanted to do something like this for a very long time. So a lot of fingers were pointing at Ukraine, which makes sense, because Russia attacked them, and Ukraine wanted to get back at them. Now, this attack made Russia very angry, and so they responded by bombing Ukraine, as Russia launched more than 80 rockets against major power plants in Ukraine and other targets, including in central Kiev. Ukraine said its air defense intercepted about half of the rockets, which is a good thing because the situation could have been a lot worse and more people could have been hurt or died. Along with that, Russia deployed attack drones and used a kamikaze drone. This attack left at least 11 people dead and 89 people wounded, and NATO, of course, came out and condemned Russia for these actions. The annoying thing with this situation is that we keep on getting these Russia and Ukraine tit for tats. You attack me, I attack you, over and over and over again. And it seems to me that the situation just keeps on escalating. Like the Russian airstrikes was one of the biggest of this war. So we should know that Putin isn't going down without a fight. We are just lucky that this time Putin didn't use nukes, because once again, a tactical nuke is still on the table for Russia. As I said at the beginning of this episode, Putin has threatened to use nukes many times, and claimed that he was not bluffing, he will do it. There is actually a report from The Mirror that claimed Putin tried to detonate a nuke, but his plans were sabotaged. Luckily, so far there have been few indications of any major nuclear tests, although the final date for such disruption in the Barents Sea is October 22nd. As I'm writing this on the 22nd, I haven't heard anything about Putin dropping nukes or testing a nuclear bomb, which is absolutely fantastic. I hope it stays that way. But if anything changes, I will add it right here. And hopefully that won't be the main topic for next week's episode. Along with this, it was also reported that Putin tried to order 2 nuclear missile tests earlier this month, which failed to take place. Honestly, I think that Putin is the only person in the Russian government that wants to use nuclear weapons, as there are Russian generals that are trying to sabotage Vladimir Putin's attempt to launch nukes, which makes me believe that there is some sort of resistance in the Russian government. Putin can yell and scream that he wants to use nukes all he wants, but if the generals say no because they understand the implications of such a decision, then they will stop it. Even though the Russian generals are stopping this attack from happening, it is still scary to think that any day now I could get a notification claiming that Russia launched a bomb into the sea. Ukraine has taken precautions, as the city council of Kiev says there are evacuation centers being equipped with potassium iodide pills, which can help against radiation in the event of a nuclear strike. According to the European Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Operations, the EU has donated 5 million of these potassium iodide tablets. These tablets are very interesting as they work by protecting the thyroid, so then the radiation isn't absorbed into that organ and then into other organs of your body. Even other countries are preparing for the worst, as Poland has come to the United States and asked for nuclear weapons to protect themselves from a possible Russian attack, either on Ukraine or on Poland itself. You could say that Poland knows a thing or two because they have definitely seen a thing or two. Now, putting nuclear weapons in Poland would be great for Poland, but it would be a terrible idea for this situation. This would mean that American nukes would be closer to the Russian border, and Russia would feel more threatened. It would almost be like if Russia put nukes in Cuba or something like that. So the question is, how do we prevent Putin from using nukes? Well, what if we nuked him first? That's a great idea. Wait, what? Well, Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, kind of pointed to that during an interview, as he claimed NATO needed to conduct preventive actions against Russian targets to prevent their use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine. He continued by saying, these actions are needed so that Russia knows what awaits them if they use nuclear weapons. He then said, not the other way around. We don't want to wait for Russia to strike us first. So, this statement is definitely an escalation. If he is saying that NATO needs to strike Russia with a nuclear bomb first, then that's a terrible thing to do. And of course Russia was not happy about this statement, as a Russian official claimed that this statement was nothing more than a call to start a world war, with unprecedentable, monstrous consequences. Even when I heard this news, I was kind of like, should we even be supporting Zelensky at all if he wants to start a nuclear war? However, that's when I did more research, as this might not have been what Zelensky was actually saying. as there is an idea that some things were lost in translation, as Zelensky's spokesperson came forward and claimed that Zelensky was referring to preventative sanctions that should be put on Russia before a full-scale invasion takes place. It also doesn't help that Zelensky was doing this interview in Ukrainian, and the word that he used for strike also has a figurative meaning such as a blow or a hit. So Zelensky could have been saying, we gotta hit them hard and put sanctions on them, and we have to strike at those sanctions first. Not saying that he wants to strike them with a nuclear bomb. So the West, along with Ukraine, is claiming that Zelensky didn't mean to say nuclear strikes, and that what he said is being taken out of context, misinterpreted, and is now being spread all over as Russia propaganda to continue this war. And Russia is claiming that Zelensky is a madman that wants to start a nuclear war. The problem is, who do you believe? There is so much propaganda out there that you can't tell if this is just Russia misinformation / propaganda, or if it's the West trying to cover up for Zelensky because he said the wrong word. Of course I want to believe that Zelensky just said the wrong word, because if I haven't said it already in this episode, I am 100% behind Ukraine, and I want them to succeed and push Russia back so then they can have a sovereign nation again. However, I don't want to see the world end in a nuclear wasteland because we didn't try and create peace. As this whole Russia versus Ukraine war situation is like a bully on a playground, with of course Russia being the bully, and they go and punch another kid, aka Ukraine. In retaliation, of course, Ukraine punches back, and it turns into this whole big brawl, which someone has to step in and stop the conflict before the bully, meaning Russia, turns and tries to attack someone else, or the next day comes into school with brass knuckles, aka nukes. I don't care who started it, someone has to finish it. The only way that we can end this war is to somehow sit down and talk it over. Have negotiations of some kind. These negotiations don't mean that NATO and the United States tell Ukraine that they have to give up the land that Russia conquered in this war. It means that we try to make a peace deal so then Russia goes back to their own side of the border and Ukraine can stay in their own sovereign country. It would be nice to somehow punish Russia for provoking this war, but that might make Russia more angry at the West, which could lead to bigger problems down the road. So NATO can say, if you give up all that land that you conquered and leave Ukraine alone, we won't punish you. The truth is, I don't know if this will work to stop the war, but we have to do something to prevent a nuclear war because that is the last thing that we want in this country. However, there are some people that don't agree we should ever promote peace in this situation. As according to Insider, Putin's nuclear threats are pushing people like Trump and Elon Musk to press for a Ukrainian peace deal. A nuclear expert warns that's dangerous. That's right, this expert is claiming that it is somehow dangerous to promote peace and prevent a nuclear war. Now, I think that this is a terrible idea, as I would rather have peace than a war that could literally kill half of the population or a lot of people. Now, even though it may be a dumb take, let's actually look at what the scientist was trying to say. The point that the scientist is trying to make is that if we make peace with Russia and Ukraine, then Russia will get the land that they took from Ukraine. And then Russia will later on claim that they will use nukes again, and we will give in and give Russia whatever they want. I believe if we actually did have peace negotiations with Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine would get all the territory back from Russia. The peace deal should not be accepted if that is on the table. And here's the thing that this nuclear scientist doesn't understand. The United States, along with NATO, can stand up for Ukraine. We have already been doing this, as America and NATO have sent billions of dollars over to Ukraine to help them fight in this war. And I don't think that we will just throw up our hands and say, Ukraine, you're on your own, because Russia has nukes. We have already had many debates with countries that have nukes before, and it has worked out and prevented a major war. Of course, I'm referring to the Cold War, as a reason that the Cold War is called the Cold War and not World War III, or everyone died in a nuclear apocalypse, is because the United States and the Soviet Union were able to sit down and talk. Did they agree on everything? No, but it prevented us from killing each other with nuclear weapons. One of the most stressful situations during this Cold War was the Cuban Missile Crisis, where one day the United States were flying planes over the island of Cuba and found Soviet nukes. This meant that the Soviet Union could strike major United States cities, and people absolutely freaked out, especially President Kennedy, and he knew he had to do something, and he had to make a decision. One option, given by one of his advisors and all the Joint Chiefs of Staffs agreed with, was to airstrike Cuba and destroy the nukes. Now, this would have destroyed the nukes, but this would have meant that the nuclear bombs would have exploded, spreading radiation everywhere, and it would have made Russia very angry, escalating the war. So Kennedy took option B, which was a more peaceful solution. He called for a blockade on Cuba and made a deal with the Russian president, as at this time, America had nuclear missiles in Turkey and Italy, which is very close to the Soviet Union's border. So Kennedy said to the Soviet Union that he would move those rockets if the Soviet Union moved their missiles out of Cuba. And guess what? They agreed! The United States took their missiles out of Turkey and India, and the Soviet Union took their missiles out of Cuba, ending the conflict. The point is that negotiations can work, and this wasn't the United States giving up because the Soviet Union had nukes, like the nuclear scientist said in the previous article, because throughout the Cold War, Americans stuck to their values. In this current war with Ukraine, we have to do the exact same thing. We have to stand up for Ukraine, but also make a deal so that Russia doesn't even think about using nuclear weapons at all. We all know that nuclear weapons are terrible and will lead to the destruction of our planet and millions of people, but I still believe that there are some people out there that want to have nuclear war. And this is why I had to end this episode on this article, because it is absolutely ridiculous and hilarious. As there was an article posted in 2011 which says, "Could a small nuclear war reverse global warming?" This article says, even a small exchange of nuclear weapons between 50 to 100 Hiroshima-sized bombs, which India and Pakistan already have in arsenal, would produce enough soot and smoke to block out the sunlight, cool the planet, and produce climate change unprecedented in recorded human history. You know what else it would do? Kill millions of people from the blast, from the radiation, and from the nuclear winter that could last months to years. This could also reduce carbon, as people are made out of carbon. In the end, I don't care how much we can slow down global warming. A nuclear war should be prevented at all costs. This means we have to somehow negotiate with Russia, not giving them everything, but doing something so then we can have peace and not a nuclear war. Peace is more important than millions of people dying. And with that, I just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Dockery Docket. And until next time, like my mom always says, be good, be kind, be loving, goodbye.